All right, y'all caught me singing. I didn't even do an intro. Kind of in a good mood. It's hot outside. So, man, I hope it didn't even come on because I was way up there. Have yourself a very Merry Christmas? Seriously? Man, it's because it's 89 degrees. I might have a little delirium. But I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. All right, y'all. It is 6/29, means June 29, 2021. It is 6:19 in the early evening, 89 degrees in Kitsap County. As you know, we had a really powerful show scheduled for you today where landlords were going to come and speak. And the executive director of the Birmingham Housing Authority, Jill Stanton, and also Kirsten Jewell from Kitsap County. So we have rescheduled that to next Thursday. So join myself and Deborah Jackson and Karen Vargas for a wonderful show. I can tell you again, the landlords wanted to really come and have their voices heard. And they have their meeting scheduled for today at the same time. And so the whole point in helping voices be heard is to have voices at the table. So we pushed it till next week. However, as all things go, it's not always really simple and easy. And it can be hard to have conversations when there's emotions and feelings kind of swirling around and you're meeting new people and distrust and all kinds of different things. So tonight we're going to talk about that instead. We already have our first person to join us, so let me go ahead and let them into the room. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Mr.?
Well, I am riding the wave. I've got my cool Gatorade because it's too hot to drink my hot tea, which I like to drink during my podcast and, have the little fire behind me and light a candle. But, I'm doing pretty good, actually. I'm doing pretty good.
Glad to hear it. I just sent some information over to Miss Deborah, so it looks like she might be joining us as well. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it probably would be a good idea to go ahead and read this. So since we are scheduled to start at the bottom of the hour, I'm actually going to read the article that you just sent me, if you are good with that. Yes. I mean, this is this one is pretty official. I was going to read the article you sent me.
Yeah, one of them is from June 25th, and that's regarding news from state. And then there is one that just came. Okay, good. You got it.
Yeah, the one from Inslee is the one that I intend to read. So, as I said, we were going to talk with landlords this evening. We were going to talk about their experience from their side and talk about their issues. Now, at the same time, and it really does affect us all. It's not just, the tenants, right? And it's all about perspective, right? We're always concerned first with our own issues and how we're impacted by things. And then we can think about and consider others, right? And oftentimes we find ourselves in situations where we could feel like we're pitted against another party, even if that's not the case, intentionally or unintentionally, which causes conflict. And so all voices should be heard. But this is the information out from Jay Inslee, and this came out Friday. So let me go ahead and just read this information because I think we all need to know it, and we may not have all had access to this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. And then I will go ahead and share it. Make my screen here a little bit bigger. So as I'm doing that, you said you were taking a walk. Is that not true? on this fine, almost a 90-degree day? It's nice enough to take a walk.
It is nice enough, and I was crazy enough to use an umbrella yesterday and walk too. So it's just a
Oh,
routine that I can't break.
now that's
So thanks
dedication.
for asking. I'm
Absolutely.
almost
All
done.
right. Well, stay cool out there. Karen Vargas has just joined us. How you doing, Karen?
Oh man, it's a day. It's been a day. And it's still continuing to be a day.
Well, you know what? The one thing about it being a day is we are blessed to be able to have that experience of having a day. True story. All right. So, Karen, as I was letting you in, I was sharing with Christina shared an article from Jay Inslee about the moratorium extension, and I just wanted to read that since we were going to start at the bottom of the hour, and since many of the folks that are tuning in were originally expecting us to talk about uh, landlords issues in regards to the moratorium and other issues that they have. I think this is very appropriate. So this article here is Inslee extends Washington state eviction moratorium into the fall. This is from Tim Groover, the Center Square, and this was dated Friday 25th, 2021 at 10 p.m. So again, you know, if you have not heard, Governor Jay Inslee has extended Washington's moratorium to September 30. So this does not end tomorrow as it was designed. It is now ending September 30th, okay? Please let people know that's very important. A week before its expiration, as many Washingtonians struggles to regain their financial footing. And we've talked about that quite a bit on this podcast. The governor announced on Thursday, following the federal eviction moratorium's extension through July 31 by the Biden administration. The announcement marks the sixth time Inslee has extended Washington state's eviction moratorium. It falls in line with Seattle, Kirkland, and Kenmore's similar decisions to extend their eviction moratoriums through September 30. Now, the Washington legislature, they passed a bill this year setting the expiration date for the state's eviction moratorium on June 30, when it was set to end. Inslee's last proclamation effectively creates a new suspension, ensuring tenants have no gap in protections. This new moratorium is now among the longest in the nation, blowing past New York's eviction ban, which was set to end on August 31. Inslee described the moratorium as a bridge to help struggling Washingtonians keep their heads above water between now and when the state economy regains some semblance of normalcy. Okay, so this is really, I won't read the whole thing. Again, you can find that article here. This is from the Washington Examiner, and you can Google it and it will pop up. I'm sure you can Google a lot of local things to find information on the moratorium. But it really truly is critical that you take advantage of any resources that do exist, because they won't be here forever. And with that, there are other things that are starting to expire. So soon, it is going to be a requirement that you start doing your job searches if you are filing for unemployment, right? So even though that moratorium is in place, there are going to be other situations that are going to change. And so you have to be abreast and aware of those things and then govern yourselves accordingly. So that's very important. Would either of you want to speak on the extension of the moratorium? What are your thoughts on that?
Christina, you there? You want to jump in on this?
Kind of in a spot where I might not be able to, but I'll try. I think it's still learning what all this means. I think from my perspective, whether the moratorium's in place or not, we just want to make sure the systems can get people kind of financially backed because of kind of the what the pandemic has posed for us economically. Landlords need to be paid. We don't want to see people evicted. You know, in terms of the announcement, you know, there's kind of part of the puzzle that gets addressed. But then there's also the recent announcement today from the federal perspective. I'm just trying to understand how that plays into the date that our state has declared. So I just have more questions and thoughts than I do have anything else to add.
And you're right, Christina. I mean, and to that end, there are folks, hundreds, probably thousands of people that have been suffering eviction even during this time, right? So although this moratorium has been in place, I have seen countless stories of folks being evicted during this time. So there are ways that landlords and owners can still evict their tenants. I mean, I've experienced here just in the county where folks have put their home up for sale to get the tenant out, and then didn't end up selling the home, which was pretty clear, right? Wasn't a thing of oh, we changed our mind or something along those lines. It was a very thinly veiled attempt to just remove their person. So these things do happen, and we have to make sure that these things come to light and their stories are shared so people understand what's going on. Karen, what are your thoughts here on the extension of the moratorium?
Well, where I'm at is what's that really going to look like when it's lifted, and how and whose community it will be affected, what we will see as a result of the lifting of the all of these plans that are on the threshold, and how do we begin to address that, because I think that's the better question, is when it's lifted and what's going to be the effects, who's going to be affected by it, do we have any um solutions, and what are we doing to be proactive, because we know it will lift, and what will be the manifestations, or what we will see as it lifts. I'm concerned about that. I'm very concerned about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What are some of the things that you've seen that are challenges that folks have been facing? Have you had any tenants that have been evicted? I guess that's my first question. Have you experienced that here in the county, working with any of your folks that have been evicted in this time, and how has that impacted them?
We've had several families that have been evicted, and we've had to reach out to family members, friends. A lot of them were couch surfing, some of them in their vehicles, living in their cars. And so we know that this is going to affect many of our community members. Do we have any emergency housing? How is that transition going to look? When it does roll out, and I'm concerned about, we've seen it even during the pandemic. What is it going to look like after this lifts? It is really concerning, and I'd like to see us talking about next steps, what we can do proactively to be, do some intervention and prevention, as well as come up with solutions as we move forward.
Yeah, I definitely wholeheartedly agree with that. It's so interesting, and with all things, it's so hard to get the word out to folks, help folks understand that they can benefit from the programs. Because sometimes, and it's been my own personal experience, right? There's a resource out there or a program, and you go to access it and you find out that you're not eligible for it for whatever reason. When you're told no so many times, it's like, what's the point? There's no point in me going. It's not for me. So it's just not going to work for me. And sometimes we interpret what we read as, well, it's for this, particular set of folks that fall under this condition, when it could actually benefit ourselves too. So it's kind of like sometimes we say no to ourselves, and don't even seek out that help. Even if it might be a no, it could be a yes this time. So and it's hard, and I definitely understand it. All right, so we got Deborah who just checked in. So let's go ahead and get her on. How are you doing, Miss Deborah?
How you doing? I'm just glad here to be here to support all of us.
Well, it is good to see you. We got a few people in the chat So shout out to Raymond. He says, "Hi, sir. What's on the agenda today?" Well, you know what is always on the agenda, right? Moving us forward. That is what is on the agenda today. And as you can see here, that's exactly what we're doing, right? Collaborating, establishing, and cultivating relationships. So that is what's on the agenda. Rob Dent, looking sound good. Thank you, sir. Visual is loud and clear. And Zulu says it definitely depends on the tenants and the landlord point of view. I believe that is what that is supposed to say. So, Deborah, you came in right at the time I just read an article on Jay Inslee extending the moratorium on eviction another 3 months, and just wanted to get your perspective on that. We were talking about the potential impact for families that have been evicted during this time, even though there is a moratorium in place. So can you just touch on that a little bit before we get into our topic for the evening?
Well, there was a new moratorium that was just set from the government. And Christine and I was just talking about it. So she was researching a little bit more because it looks like things have changed. And from the government is posing that the moratorium be lifted the end of July. But I can't speak on that or confirm that due to the fact that I'm waiting for Christina to bring back more information about that. So I'm a little topsy-turvy on this, on the government versus the state. Which one supersedes the other one?
Right, absolutely. Well, have you had the experience of any of your clients experience eviction during this time, and what has been the impact on them? Karen was reflecting on families being evicted here in the county during this time. So, can
Well, I
you
do
share
have
that?
a client that a landlord, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No
I
worries.
do have a landlord that came in and that threatened to go ahead if they didn't get their money by June of this month, that by the end of that they're going to start eviction process on the tenant. So the tenant ran to the church to go ahead and get the money so they could go ahead and wouldn't lose their place. But the landlord had already sold the complex and was going to be out of the business as of July 1st. So, there's many landlords that want to start eviction. There's several landlords who want to get out of the business and start selling their properties.
So, can I ask, that seems interesting, and I know every scenario can be unique, but you have a landlord that wanted to start eviction if they weren't paid, but had they previously sold the property and wanted to evict on behalf of the new owner, or were they just kind of fed up with not receiving it? Like, can you go a little bit
They
more?
wanted to, Marwan, they wanted to evict because they just wanted to get their money and get out. Their tenants were so far behind, and they have many tenants that's in the apartment complex that haven't paid, and they were just tired of waiting on their money. So they got out of the business, but they were going to evict if the tenants did not come up with the money as of within. They gave them 48 hours.
Gotcha. Okay. But
So
with the
they're just
moratorium,
tired of fed up of this of not being paid, their mortgage being behind, their credit report, their credit, score was going down. They had bills. This was their livelihood. This was their retirement plan. They were just fed up.
what's
So,
interesting about that? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and jump in there, Christina.
yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to be that person. In terms of a time check, Marwan, 6:30 was the time, and I don't know that if anybody that's coming on knows of if they got word of the switch. Maybe if we could start there and talk about the kind of introduce the topic that we're moving towards too, that'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you guys know, as all of you know, tonight we were going to have landlords on, and um, just as Deborah was just reflecting on the perspective of the tenant of the landlords, we needed their and want their voices to be heard also, and so they were going to come on, and we were going to have a discussion with them about what they were experiencing and their truth. And then also have Joe Stanton on and from Birmingham Housing Authority, Kirsten Jewell. And they both can also add their perspective and maybe even answer some questions, right? And put the landlords at ease. And what ended up happening was, as the word got out, other stakeholders wanted to be a part of this. And so the landlords actually have their, I don't know if it's a monthly meeting at 6:30 tonight at the same time as the podcast. And they're like, look, we really want to be there and we really want to tell our story, but we have to meet, right? It's important, it's dire. And now, the governor has extended this 3 months. We have to talk. So we can't come on the podcast, but we really want to be there. The voices need to be heard. And then we had some of the other buy-in force that want to have their voices heard too also. And so we said, okay, we've got to go ahead and reschedule this thing. And so now the new night will be next Tuesday, July 8th at 6:30 p.m. Same format, same everything, but it'll probably be double or triple the size. So, which is fantastic because more voices to me mean more potential solutions, and more people being made whole, so as much as possible. So that's what's happening. And so what we decided to do is, folks said, hey, you know what, this is still an opportunity because we planned to have this event go off and then we had to cancel, right? And of course, canceling something or rescheduling something and makes people upset, can make people angry, can make people frustrated, can make them say, well, y'all ain't got your stuff together. I'm not going to work with y'all. And I knew this wasn't going to work out, or whatever the case may be. And then what ends up happening is, any kind of synergy or momentum that you have is dismantled and destroyed right at the gate. And so we felt like it was important to come on and talk about working through that process. Those of you that watched the podcast the other day with Smiley D, Daryl, we talked about just that, right? And why is it that sometimes, other Black people won't support Black business? And we talked about those issues. We talked about solutions. And so it's important to have those conversations. We're a small town, right? And some of our issues are national issues. They're not unique to Kitsap County, but we need to have that conversation, and we have to be able to model that behavior for others. It's not enough to just identify the issues, but we need to identify the solutions and then model those solutions and share those out. And so if we call ourselves leaders, whether or not we are actual leaders because we put ourselves in that place, or people have put us in that place, or people just see us as leaders, it's important that we take that on. Unlike Charles Barkley once said, I'm not a role model. Well, you're a role model whether you like it or not. So it is what it is. So that's what we're doing tonight. Does that encapsulate it pretty good, Christina, Deborah, and Karen?
Yeah, you captured that because we've got to talk through our stuff. One of the things that we've been dealing with, how are we going to resolve anything when we can't even come to the table and talk about our offenses if we can't even confront them? And I think that we really do have to have this conversation if we're ever going to heal and move forward with reconciling all of our differences. I think this is where we start. This is how we start. Even if it's hard truths, we've got to speak them. We've got to address them, and we've got to want to do that. You know, Everybody said, "Well, I don't want to do that. I'm hurt and I've been harmed, and I don't want to put myself in that space where you can hurt me again." But how do we begin to move towards healing and reconciling when we don't even want to acknowledge or address or confront? I'm not sure how, help me, because I'm trying to understand this process as well. Because this has been something that we've dealt with for so long in our culture, in our community, in our families, So, me, myself, I want to be healed. I'm saying to those, if I've offended you in any way, please forgive me and please come to me so we can talk about this stuff. And don't be carrying the art on and I'm thinking everything's okay. And you got all of this stuff that you got built up inside you, and the way that you communicate with it and the way you carry your trauma and your hurt and your harm is destructive as well. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with it?
Christina, Deborah, you want to jump in here?
I was pausing to give Miss Deborah some space to respond, but I just want to add a little bit more context. You guys give me a thumbs down if my audio starts breaking up, but let's rewind a little bit, right? So this group of 4, but when did we try and start working together and chopping it up, Jay?
I think it was
Yes.
Wednesday. Mm-hmm.
So that's a less than a week ago, and we were trying to solve a problem, right? We're trying to connect resources to our community because we know who we want to help get resources into those who can benefit the most. And you just can't jump from a solution and into action. I really believe that relationship and trust is part of it. And what I appreciate so much in the last 6 days with you guys is that we were able to bring, it hasn't been easy, and we're not celebrating every single high point or every single low point, but I love being able to be me. And that's what's going to keep me going in this type of work, is if, one, I'm doing the best I can, but then when I feel I have a safe space to express it, and we're starting to rebuild trust within ourselves. Like, I need to trust myself that I'm doing the right thing for this group. And so I really appreciate you guys for the last 6 days giving me space to contribute, even though I don't know exactly how to do it yet. And but I feel like we're going in the right direction. So Miss Deborah, I'm going to pause there and see if
Well,
you have
I have to say we all don't know how to do it, but we're coming together to teach and to help one another on how to do it. So we're all putting our best foot thoughts forward to help one another. And I think that's going to help us to start with the healing. Number one thing, accepting one another's differences, accepting one another's different languages, and understanding one another. And wanting to be receiving of that other's individual's ideals, their perceptions. And so I think that's one thing where the healing starts and where the trust begins. Like you said, I heard you made a statement, Miss Christina, about trust. And first we have to trust ourselves and feel confident within ourselves to be able to go ahead and express our true feelings. And then knowing that we are in a safe place with the people that we are working with. So, I mean, that's what I have to say on that. Um, I think we're in the middle of a growing experience, and we're trying to get away from we're our own worst enemies. Um, mm, I think we're at a good place, and we're at a good start. I mean,
All
after what
right.
we've been through, I mean, that's how I feel about it.
I appreciate that, Ms. Deborah. Sorry, I'm going to say one more thing, Marwan, if it's okay. And
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
detour a little. I'm going to detour as well. So, because I'm trying to tie it back to the work of why I started here is around trauma-informed care, right? And then is trauma-informed care equitable? And one of the things I remember early on in a training with other community members is the example the trainer gave is when you have new organizations come in or a new staff member come in, how do people react to that new staff member, that new organization? Do they kind of wait at the sidelines and just say, they raise their eyebrow and say, yeah, let's just see how they land?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they the type of community that says, I see someone coming in, what can I do to be supportive and help them succeed? And whether that you call that trauma informed or just relationship and being able to, want to remove barriers for people so that the community has access. That's what excites me about working with you guys. Is just that I feel like we have that shared goal, that we want to do the best we can for the community. So I'm gonna stop there.
And what I'll say too, just to build on what Deborah was saying, is it's not only giving people that space and that grace, but it's also saying, hey, you know what, I've got to be accountable on how I take in and receive information, because you may think you're in this situation where you need to extend grace to this other person, but they're going to say some things to you that's going to cause your reaction to really kind of steer how things go. And I feel like a lot of times folks aren't really all the way there to do that work yet, right? They're kind of looking at it from the other side, like, okay, this person needs to be ready to hear what I have to say, and then we can move forward. But they haven't really thought about, the impact of listening to and taking it in on the other side. And so that can be very difficult. Karen is shaking her head, so I take it you agree with that.
Marwana, I'm glad that we're chopping it up, because the bottom line is, Christine was talking about trauma informed.
Mhm.
What does that mean to people that are walking around wounded? And there's been hurt and harm. Because I think that we throw out sometimes terms and we don't get to the root of the hurt, the harm, the embitterment. Deborah and I, we've had conflict in the past, and we've spoken about that. But we're coming to that place to be able to at least begin to communicate, which
Yes.
some are not even able to do. How do we cultivate that process? Because some people, they walk around in their pain, in their hurt, harm, and bitterment, and they and I won't say they, I would say what happens is it causes us to operate and relate to one another in an unhealthy way.
Mhm,
and
mhm.
and how do we begin to address some of that? Because we're talking about this trauma, we're talking about being able to step into a place where we can move towards healing and reconciliation, or at least just towards communication, to begin that process, because I believe communication is a beginning, it is a step towards healing, I would say. And so how do we get there?
Well,
Well,
Karen,
Miss,
I have to say this. I believe at first you have to want to get
Say
there.
it.
Due
Say
to
it.
the fact is, I'm going to share our relationship.
Yeah.
We have the same goals, we have the same drive, we have the same vision. And even if I was hurt, you were hurt, and everything, the goal and our drive and our vision was bigger than us. And we had to see past our feelings and wanting and be able to, we learned how to share and express our wounds with one another so that we could go ahead and move and see our goals, our dreams, our visions through together. Because we learned, you and I, that we knew that we were stronger together. And to learn how to communicate and accept how the other one feels, and to learn what boundaries that we shouldn't cross, or if we did, own up to it. Accountability played into play with us, and that helped us to be able to move forward. I mean, that's what I mean, that's how I see how our relationship, was built, and our trust within each other, so that we became to be good working partners, friends, and then ended up loving one another. And we still have conflict, but we learn how to communicate and accept each other's feelings, and respect each other's feelings and respect one another. And so that's how we were able to work through it.
So
I
Deborah,
mean,
can I
that's what I
challenge
would
you?
say. Would you say that, Karen?
I would say that I can pick up the phone, and I can say you can pick up the phone and you can fuss me out all day long, and I can fuss you out all day long. But then when it's all said and done, we still know how to come back together and work together and be able to express it. And I can truly say I have to learn how to listen to you better. And you have to learn how to hear what I have to say better. And as we
Correct.
begin to do this, that's when we're building this and strengthening our relationship. Because at one time I was like, no, I don't want to hear nothing that sister got to say, not a word. And so that closes the door for us to be able to come back in and connect and begin to work on strengthening our relationship. It's when we can't even humble ourselves or even have enough, within ourselves to come and have these conversations, to and speak our truth and be able to say it and know, okay, all right, Debbie, you know what? That's right. That's true what you said about me. That is true. And can you forgive me? Can you forgive me for that? I don't want to stay stuck in me. I don't want to stay stuck in my woundedness. I don't want to do that. That's not going to serve me. I go to bed. I'm the one that's laying down embittered and waking up embittered and can't move forward. That's not serving me. That's not healthy. That'll take years off of your life. We've got to learn how to address our, whether it's trauma, whether it's our conflict. We've never really just come together to talk about how do we resolve our stuff, our conflict that we have with one another. I think it's important as we talk about it that we, let's take the mask off. Let's stop
Yes.
fronting and let's get down to the nitty gritty about where we are.
And I think that's what we've done. We've taken our mask off. And that you and I have taken our mask off, and we've had those hard conversations. And at the end of the day, we ended up respecting one another, and we did start listening to one another. And I think that's why we're where we are today with one another.
So let me jump in here, Deborah, because I want to drill down on that a little bit. Shout out to Tracy Flood. She says, "Well said, Deborah Moore Jackson. Soon it may be Judge Flood. So and how would we address you? Do we address you as your honor, right? Your honor would be the way that we would address Tracy Flood. If that comes to pass. So shout out to her. I give an example to a lot of folks because they understand this analogy, right? You get cut off in traffic and, you're upset, right? Maybe you got your kid in the car and it was really close. It scared you and you're upset. And the person who cut you off honestly didn't see you, right? And it can change your whole day. Now you're holding this and the other person, they don't even know that they've done anything to you, and you're mad at your coworkers, you're mad at your family, you're mad at the world, just everything is bad, and so it can be very frustrating. And so hopefully you can identify with that analogy. But it's important, ladies, that people have tangible examples that they can draw from. So when you say, we were ready to do the work, right? What does that look like? What are the steps, that you took as an individual, your own personal accountability to say, you know what, I'm in conflict with this person. I'm angry with this person. I don't see eye to eye with this person. This person is saying or doing things that I don't like, but yet and still I'm going to navigate through this for the betterment of myself, the mission, or whatever the case may be. What are those tangibles?
Well, for me, I can only speak for myself. I had to work on my own stuff. I had to
Correct.
begin to get um, some information. How do I work out my conflict? Go through some conflict resolution. Go through some listening circles. Begin to, you gotta get tools to be able to deal sometimes with all of your stuff. Sometimes you can't pull yourself up out of it. You gotta set a table so that you can work through it. And I've learned so much working with the Kitsap County conflict resolution, with the People's Institute, with different organizations that deal with how do you work through conflict, move through conflict, be able to stay the course even when conflict is on the threshold, and when it manifests itself and blows up. And I think it's important that we all begin to seek some of those tools that's going to help us, not just in on our workplaces, but in our families, in our lives.
Yes.
That's going to help us, because we know, we have to be real with ourselves. When
Yes.
I know I got an anger issue and I've got to work through it, I've got to say, all right, Karen, you got some root of bitterness springing up here, and you walking in unforgiveness, and you don't want to, not that offense hasn't taken place, but it's how I'm relating in that offense that is becoming harmful now to myself and to others. And so, do I continue to allow that to continue to grow and manifest, or do I go right away, and do I address those issues? Do I try to resolve them quickly? Do I allow time to go by and unaddressed, and I'm building up my own perspective? Oh, I can't stand, talking dirt in my own head, and then talking dirt out my own mouth, and causing all that venom to spew out with others.
Come on.
I'm just saying, we've gotta begin to say, hey, it is that. So what we gonna do now?
All right, I like it. Deborah, Christina, what are your tangibles?
Well, my tangible, I'm going to use you as an example. Marwan, is when I felt like I wasn't respected, and that's what I felt. I had to take a step back. I needed, to vent, and then rationalize, is it me or was it you? Did I read the correct thing, or did I see the correct thing, or did I hear the correct thing? But I was receptive, and take a step back and analyze the whole situation, and to be able to come back into the circle and wanting to work together, and then finding forgiveness within me.
All right, I like that. And just to, speak on that, since I'm the other party in your scenario.
Let's keep it 100. Let's keep it 100.
Here we go. Here we go.
We could be teaching somebody else.
So the thing is when I came to the meeting last Wednesday to meet, it was centered around, the 1-on-1 3-on-3 basketball tournament, right? And to, connect with your godson and get signups and whatnot, and just have a chance to meet and talk. And, of course, I don't know all the things that you're feeling, but at the same time, that you haven't worked together in the community, although you exist. And, I'm prepared for some tension. And so understanding that someone may need to do that, right? I can go in, and I say it's like the rock, paper, scissors of emotion, right? Am I guarded? Am I going to fight? Or am I going to put out my hand, right? And so I can come in guarded and be on my defensive. I could be ready to assault back. I'm going to throw the punches as good as everyone else. Or I could put my hand out and say, you know what? Go ahead, say what you need to say. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear you. And then I'm going to go ahead and absorb that. And I'm going to resist my default. What's your default? Is your default to guard? And many of us are very guarded, right? We've been hurt.
Correct.
So we're going to stay in a guarded posture, and we're going to take the blows, right? And then maybe we counter. And for me, what is different, my tangible would be, instead of countering, is to put my hand out and say, okay, I accept what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I validate what you're saying to me, whether I agree with it or not. And now I'm going to share with you, and then let's see how we can move forward. And so I think that would be the tangible, is to really say, analyze what's your default. Is it guard, fight, or collaborate, and then realize what space you're in, and then adjust and then reflect on that.
That was beautifully said, Marwan, and it made me reflective of myself. I was reflecting on myself, and I actually have a question for you. So the ability,
Sure.
the EQ, your emotional intelligence to be able to provide an offering instead of mirroring something you don't, that feels a little bit more toxic. Is that how much energy does that take? What are you doing to keep yourself there?
So that takes a tremendous amount of energy. So when we had our meeting this morning or this afternoon at 12:30, and it was like, oh, we're just going to cancel this and we're just going to move it on, reschedule and whatnot. The first thing that I felt was important for me is to say, look, my EQ is down right now. I'm in a space that isn't from a space of strength, right? I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling combative. And I need you to understand that I'm not at my best. So because I'm not at my best, if you can give me some grace, because you may be in a better space than me, then we're going to be able to navigate through, right? I'm telling you that I'm vulnerable right now, which I don't typically do. And so that's a different action for me to try. Now I'm not always like that. Like I said, we're all trying to learn this. We have
That's called growth.
trauma. Right, exactly. We've dealt with this trauma for a long time, but I really do value the collaboration. I value us as a people, and I definitely value, the community. And so I want all of those things to be healed and as strong as possible. And so if I state it and I show that vulnerability, my hope is that you will extend me the grace, and that, the conversations we had, last Wednesday when we first started, and the few conversations we've had up to this point, that it was authentic enough that you would honor that, and then we can kind of steer through that until I can navigate myself back to a space of, confidence and, okay, this is what it is. What's the bright side? Let's be optimistic. How do we make this, the best of the situation we have?
I'm glad you debriefed on the language, because that when you did that helped me. That actually was a sign for me to not have all my feelings in the room, right? So it was giving space so that we could figure out how to move forward together. And then by doing that helps me reflect. You said, my time. Typically, if someone comes at me, I am not the one with the fists up. I think I just kind of, it's the freeze. I think I just kind of like, oh, I'm going to just try and figure out how to, and I'm not confrontational. And I don't leave feeling good about that. So what I appreciate tonight is the reflection, Marwan, and the group, for us to be able to like see it in action. Because I feel like that was growth, because we're trying to figure out how to work together. We all have something to offer. We are looking at it as resource rich, right?
Correct.
And not a scarcity model, but moving forward together. Anyway, so I'm gonna wait for the next question, Marwan.
Well, let me put myself on the spot, right? So this is how I saw myself. Did I project that to you? Was I effective in what I said? I did mention I was low EQ in the space and in the time, but my intent from me, sharing the space that I was in and what I was trying to do, does that match up? Does that jive?
I was just glad that we were able to identify and understand where we were at that point in time, and that we took the time to say, "Look, let's back it up," and was able to really hear what each one of us had to say, and not, we didn't jump out the frying pan, we stayed in it, and we worked through it, and that was like, that's where we want to get to, because I'm trying to be the best Karen I know how to be. I'm not trying to be anyone else. I just want to be the best that, I want to do better, and I want to be better. And I know that we've got a lot of work ahead of us to help our community as well as ourselves, to be able to know how to stay gauged, even though we might be offended in it, we might have different perspectives, we might not agree, it might get heated, things might begin to surface and come up out of us, but to be able to say, okay, you know what, Marwan, I heard you when you said that this afternoon, because I tried to be real quiet.
Hmm.
I did, because I just wanted to hear, because sometimes I think we just jump into to getting into that discourse instead of really listening to one another. And I think that has harmed us as well, because I remember when Debbie and I, Debbie might say something, I said, what? Oh no, what? And we ready to thump. I remember when we was ready to throw down in the parking lot. We weren't listening to one another, we was ready to do. And so I think when we're at that threshold, how do we back it up? How do we pull ourselves back out of that confrontational response when we know conflict is arising? We see it bubbling up.
Karen, let me jump in there really quick because I think this is really a critical point that you just mentioned, right? You're saying, hey, look, I got to a point where this was going to get physical, right? And other people from the outside looking in sometimes will say, well, these folks claim to be trying to do the work and this and that, but then when it comes down to it, they just like everyone else, like they getting ready to go to blows. We didn't even go into that point, and so folks will find ways to kind of dismantle progress, right? And not acknowledge, look, we're all human. We're not going to be perfect, right? We can understand that things like post-traumatic slave syndrome exist.
Yes.
And if we understand that, then how come we can't recognize it when someone else is exercising that against us because they're in that space, right? We go back to our defense and then we're ready to fight, right? But we can elocute and talk about all the books and all the theories and the pedagogy and all these other things. But then when we're in the space, all of a sudden we can't do the things that we can't apply, we can't apply what we've learned, right? And so I think that is really critical for people to understand that the work isn't easy, that is difficult, and you're not always going to be your best self. And emotions are powerful, right? We can get beside ourselves pretty easily. And if you are looking for a way to dismantle that or say, aha, see, I knew it, then we're not going to make that progress. What are your thoughts on that statement there, ladies? Christina or Deborah?
I'm still processing, Mo.
Yep.
All right. No worries.
Deb, you talked about that Willie Lynch. Yeah? We were talking
yes,
about
right.
that
Lynch
Willie
syndrome.
Lynch mentality and syndrome, right?
Correct.
So we recognize, like we said, we look at the pedagogy, we read the books, we understand it and everything. But how do we see ourselves when we just falling right into the playbook? And how do we begin to walking out of that, walking out of that? And I say we have to walk into not engaging like that. How do we begin that process of doing it and not just talking about it?
Well, I think
Not
you
just
got to
being
want
here.
to accept change in yourself to become a better person. And I think that's where it starts. Do I want to learn to communicate with this individual? Do I want to learn to be able to work with this person? So I still think it all stems back to working on yourself first. Because it stems back to how can you love somebody else when you don't love yourself? How can, what am I looking for? I'm just going to put it out there. I think you have to have the desire and the want to go ahead and change, and the desire and want to receive other people and respect their idealistic, their behavior, their character, and define understanding, and then move forward.
So if I will, or if I may, I think you're speaking to mindset, right? And I think a big part of our mindset is we have to get to a space of, you know what, if I acquiesce or I allow you to share, even if it seems like if someone's looking from the outside and you're saying some things to me in a raised voice and it's really critical and you're frustrated and angry and people can see it, I don't have to feel like this is a weakness for me to be taking that and someone to be seeing that, right? I think, we've got to, that it's that mindset of saying, hey, okay, again, the intangible is, well, we've got to be accountable. We got to be willing to do the work. We have to be ready, right? These are kind of intangible, thoughts on how we do the work. But ultimately, the tangible of it is, it's typically seen as a weakness, right? Ain't no one gonna talk to me like that. I'm gonna keep it 100 because it ain't going to, you know what I'm saying? That's how we tend to be. And it's like, you know what? I'm gonna just fall back. Go ahead and say and what you need to say, right, in your space. And I'm not gonna take offense to it, right? Now, I'm obviously there's limits, right? If you just calling me all out my name and going crazy, that's a whole nother thing. But even in that space, I think there are times when it's like, look, this person just needs to get it out. And once it's out, we can move forward. And that is not easy to do, right? Everyone can't stand there, especially in the face of, I did nothing wrong. And now I've got to, kind of take this from you, this barrage, and then, absorb it and then kind of come back and be solution oriented when the other party isn't solution oriented. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You're shaking your head there, Karen.
Well, Marwan, we're talking about gathering together and growing together. Well, we ain't gonna grow together if we can't even come together. I mean, there has to be a gathering or coming together or addressing that so that we can move towards growth. I
Right.
can be over here and I can set myself down in the soil and I can grow and everything, but we're talking about growing together. We're talking about doing something collectively, collaboratively, working together, supporting one another, being in community with one another. That's a whole different dynamic. And when those dynamics come into play, because I can move in isolation. I can I that's an easy do. You know, all of us can
Mm-hmm.
move in isolation. It's how we engage with one another is concerning and what we have to deal with. And so when we talk about, how do we begin to address it? Well, you know what? No man is an island. We've got to come together to address these issues. As a people, as a community, as individuals that are working together alongside one another in the community. Are we going to always be in conflict? Are we always going to be combative? Are we always going to be misunderstanding one another because we don't even want to communicate? We don't even want to talk about it. And so I'm saying, yeah, let's pull this dirt from up under that rug and
Yeah,
let's deal
absolutely. I think we can make ourselves martyrs, right? And just say, you know what? I'll just do it myself. Never mind. And then we stay in that space for so long, and it's like, man, won't nobody help me with nothing? But you've been practicing
Yes.
them for all this time, right? So you've just been looking down. So it's hard to look up and say, okay, let me reach out and do that there. Deborah, Christina?
Mine was just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I just wanted to acknowledge because what Karen was talking about doing the work and practicing, being alongside Karen for these past few years, I've had to unlearn quite a bit because I'm so used to going fast and getting ahead of the group. And one of the things that I've learned in being in community with Karen and the style and the people that she's working, it's a collaboration and how powerful if we can work together. And so, Ms. Karen, I was wondering if you're willing to talk a little bit about villaging our voice for people who haven't experienced that, and what that possibility might be.
You know, one of the reasons why we thought it was so important to begin to village and pull our community together to have these conversations. Some of the conversations are challenging, some of them are difficult, but we wanted to be able to do it. We wanted to be able to do it in a safe space. That's why we do it in the circle forums. That's why we come together, address some of these issues that begin to manifest and surface within our community. And we do it across cultural barriers, racial barriers, all of those issues, because we also work with, you know, speaking truth together. And so some of the conversations, yeah, you know, we talk about our stuff. We talk about institutionalized racism. We talk about conflict resolution within our own communities. And we've so many times have called those ones that have been in conflict for so long to come to the table, and have found that even that is challenging because they they know that there's conflict, but yet they won't come to the table to have the conversation. And we're not trying to pull them to the conversation to accuse them and throw them under the rug and all of that. We want to begin this process like we're having right now, just being transparent, speaking our truth, you know, being able to put it on the table,
Yeah.
being able to speak and be heard. And so, you know, it
Right.
is important that if we want to move out of this conflict, we got to be intentional on how we're going to do this, you know, or how
Yeah.
we setting a table to get the end results that we want, which is healing, restoration, reconciliation, you know, to be able to heal these issues. So I think we, you know, we this is a work that we have to continually, continually grow and nurture. Because it's not going to just happen poof out the air, like I said. No, we've got to work this thing. We've got to walk in it. We've got to begin to cultivate it and
Yeah.
do that work as well.
And it's really interesting, Ms. Karen, because when what Miss Deborah said was, you know, it's got to start with us. This work has to start with us individually. And I think it's nice when we have the space and we don't have a deadline in mind, and we're not working with someone else if we could work on it individually. But we're never in that, we don't have the luxury of that sometimes. You know, sometimes there's a need that needs to be met, and we want to connect to resources quickly and get up to speed. So being able to adapt quickly and know that you want to know yourself and be more in touch with what you're feeling, and then work positively with others. That's a lot of tools to put into play. A capacity that I need to figure out how to do better, but I'm just so excited that with this group we're just going to keep trying. and and I think Miss Deborah mentioned it. It's the stronger together. It's that shared goal of knowing that, you know, how amazing we can keep moving forward together as we just keep expanding and growing.
Yeah, those are absolute facts. Another tangible, I typed in the chat. Uh, when I was teaching at the college, and I don't know where I got this from, but I loved it so much. Uh, if you put a piece of paper on the ground, and if you don't have a piece of paper, you can pretend like you have this piece of paper, whether you're sitting or you're standing. Take a look down, and that paper says, "Is what I'm doing serving the mission?" And if it's not, that's an immediate check for you to alter, what it is that you're doing, what it is you're saying, what it is you're thinking. And so it's very helpful to stay on task, or to get yourself back on task as you start to veer off, because we're undoubtedly going to do that. And I found that to be very helpful for me, as you use these things, kind of, put these things into habit, and practice it often. And you'll be surprised. You'll look down and say the phrase, "Is what I'm doing right now serving the mission? Am I trying to build us as a community? Am I trying to work on my personal or professional development? Am I learning how to give grace? Am I learning how to be accountable? And by looking at that, it's instant. It's either yes or no. And then you can start to make that change. And it's a really powerful tool. And my students that use that really did find that to be helpful. So I hope people can put that in their toolbox and find that as an effective tool to use as they work on themselves.
I'm glad you said that, Marwan, because our students, we take them to National Youth Leadership every year in Minnesota, and one of the models that Living Life Leadership says is, nothing changes until you do.
Mm.
Nothing changes until you do. So if we are stuck in the mindset, and we have to unstick ourselves, we got to get unstuck when it comes down to the change that we want to see. If we want to see things change for our community and change the way that we're interacting, that change must first start with us. That change must start right here with us. We've got to do the work ourselves, and then it'll spread abroad.
Yeah, those are facts. I think we've had a fantastic conversation. As everyone knows, you're watching the Conduit with Marwan Cameron. We are having a discussion on a powerful discussion that really can change not only yourself but change your community, the country, the people just at large. I mean, this is scalable and tremendously powerful. Christina mentioned the restorative and the healing circle. Can you speak to that? How can people get involved in that? Because I think those resources are important for people to know about and have access to. And right before you do, I was invited this Saturday and I spoke on it in a previous podcast, and I didn't know what to expect. We talked about, connecting our ancestry and what made us informed and shaped who we are today. And, not only was that, I mean, that's heavy stuff, first off, but two, you're performing, these thoughts and this reflection in the space of some people I knew, some people I don't know, some people I'm definitely like this with. And it's like, do I want to, kind of put my arms down and get something out of this thing? Like, how far do I want to go? And it was nice I didn't have to go first. And I'm listening to the stories. And it's like, you know what? You're here, right? Look down at the papers. What I'm doing now, serving the mission. So you've got an opportunity here to really think about it. And it was like, wow, man, that was some deep questions there. I mean, that was just like for me. And then I was able to reflect on it for like the next few days. So it was really powerful. But how do people get involved in that, Karen? Because that's critical.
Yeah. Well, we meet every month, the last Saturday of every month. We village. We work with the Kitsap County Conflict Resolution. We set the tone. We also work with Kitsap Surge, with Speaking Truth Together. We come together, speaking that truth together. We village together. We're able to set that table for those that they want to come in, and we try to set a tone where it's a brave space for people to come in, and it's a nurturing place to be able to hear from one another. And it's not a space for us to bite and devour one another. It's a space for us to really come together, to understand one another, to share and to listen to one another. And it's a healing circle. We Ubuntu and we Sankofa. We go back, we get them, we bring them in. We do those things is very culturally relative to each of our cultures, and we do culture share. And we always acknowledge the land that we're on. We acknowledge that we are on Suquamish and Slalom tribal lands, and understanding that we've got to undo some harms, so we can move forward in a healing way. And we're ready to address those things. We're ready to move that forward, and was able to, this work all came out of, villaging our voices with Black Lives 365, because we said we're not just gonna talk about our community and cultural issues just at Martin Luther King or Black History or Juneteenth. We need to be doing this work 365 days out of the year, So that's why we decided with Black Lives 365, we're going to be villaging our voices every month to deal with our issues within our community and our families, our culture. And so it's been a real a nurturing place for me to hear from all the voices. Are they get the opportunity to lift up their voices and to be heard. And so I think that's the beginning of that growth and beginning of that healing process. And so thank you, Marwan, for joining us this past village.
Yeah, no, it was profound. It was awesome. I got a lot out of it. And it was a lot of fun. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. Christina, do you have any resources that you can share, either workshops and things coming up through Kitsap Strong or some other organizations that you can share with folks?
Absolutely. So very excited. Marlena Simmons just sent out a communication to our network partners and people who have subscribed to our newsletter, that we have a save the date in October. I think it's like the 7th and 8th for Resiliency Summit. So kind of like what we're talking about here, it's like leading with your cultural strength, having those workshops of hope and resilience. So I know that's down the road, but what I'd love for and invite the group in the community to do is, express to Marlena, what workshops would you like to see? And I also want to challenge the group, because I feel like we're resource rich. What conversations would you like to lead? So think about that. We still have some time, but I think I'm always one to, it's just not about the destination, but it's the process and the journey. So when you say, what are resources, being able to like plan that out, I think that's a growth process. And I'm also getting texts from Miss Deborah, and I know she really wants to be part of it. I want to acknowledge what she's saying. So she would love to discuss love language at some time, but we will always have an opportunity to talk about that. And if we could, in the beginning, we talked about the date as July 8th, and that is the correct date, but that's a Thursday, not a Tuesday. So I just wanted to put that out there. So back to resources. I'm also excited to just say that I'm Miss Karen asked about being trauma informed, and my journey is always continuously understanding that term. But when we talk about what it feels like and what it means, it's like understanding that behavior is a form of communication, and having an understanding of somebody just allows for that room for empathy, so that we can heal the whole person, that it's not transactional, that we're interacting in a relational way, right? So that's being trauma informed. What I'm excited about and offering to the group, it's not a training for the community just yet, but we are taking some training around Community Resilience Initiative. They're offering it, and it's talking about the predictive brain and how the brain predicts threat and the brain predicts safety. And what I loved about that story and that analogy is that resilience is when we're able to rewire our brain from predicting threat to actually starting to predicting safety. So instead of feeling like I'm this animal in the woods and I'm going to be eaten, you actually see something and you feel like maybe I have an opportunity to eat, right? So that being able to just work through our biases, work through the unconscious, the explicit biases, and pause and notice and move to a place of safety rather than being with your fists up. I love Marwan, how you explain these things. I think you're the resource man. You're imparting a lot of wisdom.
Well, as I said, I still struggle. I will continue to struggle, but I am trying to actively heal. And I typed that in the chat. Are you actively healing? And what is it that you're trying to do? And don't worry about how you're perceived when you have your shortcomings, because you're going to have a bad showing, right? LeBron doesn't win every time he goes out on the court, right? And so that's important. Stay encouraged and keep trying, and you'll continue to improve. And that's really where it comes to, doing the work. Are you ready? Are you willing? Are you this? Though that's all the
Right.
kind of intangible pieces to it. But I like to try to bring it down to something that, there's actionable items that people can do. Take a class, go to a workshop, have a conversation with someone else, analyze how you dealt with the situation. What could you have done differently? And that's that, post situation analysis. There's so many things that we can do. Watch YouTube videos, and get
Yeah.
with other folks, and then put yourself in that space, because until you're trialed by fire, you're not going to know. You can consume as much information as you want and be an expert, right? I'm an SME, I'm a SME, I'm a subject matter expert, but I haven't been in the scenarios. And once I get in there, all that stuff I learned is gone. It's like, hey, where's all that stuff I learned? And right out the window. So, don't throw yourself in the deep end. Just put a toe in the pool,
Stop that. Put on your boxing gloves. That's right. What do you say? You took out your earrings. You threw it down. Yeah. It goes out the window.
Pedagogy mop. I'm gonna show you. So yeah, but that's it.
That's it.
Marwan, actually, if I could insert one more, I'd like to invite you and others on July 10th. It's a Saturday at 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Professional Leaders of Color. We're hosting a Zoom. In May, we did one for women and families of color, the wellness and health and wellness for them. And now we're doing for the health and wellness for men and families of color. So we're going to have some speakers. Really excited to have Joel Truesdale. He's a youth speaker, youth leader. He's going to talk about physical health. I'm trying to think of some others who are lined up. Pastor Riley will be speaking. And then we also have Suquamish Tribal member Nigel Lawrence, who will be talking about healing the canoe. And we'll also have some other speakers. And we have a great MC coming, Caleb, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So my apologies, Caleb, if you hear this podcast today. But we're really excited that you're asking the question of, are you actively healing? And we're hoping that the presenters, kind of bring topics that spark that question and give ideas on how to actively heal. And it was designed. We had a huddle with some men in the room, and this is kind of what we're bringing forward on July 10th. So July 10th, 1 to 3, Professional Leaders of Color. The Zoom information is on the Facebook event.
Right, I am typing that in the chat, and I can tell you, I think I've only missed one of those meetings. I even was on vacation and attended the meeting, and so there is really good information there. So I do encourage everyone to attend, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to kind of put this information out as I get better, and maybe get an assistant or two to help me to kind of share this information as it comes out. I do want to respect our time.
Yes.
We are at about almost an hour and a half, so it went really quickly. But good things always do go so fast.
You know what, Marwan? Because we're talking about this process of healing and reconciliation. We for many years we've been doing social and emotional, learning and all of these things. And one thing I've always said, and I'll continue to speak it forward, is that we have to do cultural healing as well. You can't just do social and emotional and not do cultural. There are cultural relevant communities that have experienced traumatic things that need to be done in a culturally relevant way. And that healing needs to be done in that same way. When the Jewish community was harmed, they from their cultural lens, they had to go through their cultural healing practices. And I believe that also for the natives, when they did the healing of the canoe, that they had to leave their community and their cultural traditions at the forefront of their healing processes. But I don't see that happening within other cultures. And I think it's very vital when we're asking different communities and cultures to step into millennial or a colonizing process, it can be difficult. It can be challenging. And so I wanted to just put that out there because, when we're talking about healing and reconciliation, I think that we have to look at how we're doing that in a culturally relevant way with those cultures that have been harmed. And I think it's important.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank all three of you for coming on tonight and sharing, being vulnerable, modeling. It is so important. I was saying last year, you're welcome. I was saying last year that things felt a little bit different as we were going into the new year. And it just seemed like people were at a different space, that they wanted to collaborate, that they wanted to come together and start to work past some of the issues. And that's really overwhelmingly been my experience for this year. And not to say that I haven't, had my issues, right? I had a podcast that said, "Are you a leader?" and had to make an apology to someone. But I think that's important too, right? They need to see that you can acknowledge when you're wrong, right? And I don't mind being that, live vicariously through me, through the mistakes and the wrongdoing that I've done, if it's going to help someone else. So a challenge to the men, because it is really important. We do need to be in leadership positions, but to be in those leadership positions, we have to work on ourselves too. And this isn't women's work. This isn't soft. This isn't weak. These are measurements of true strength. We can build alone, but can we build together? That is really what it comes down to. So I'm going to leave it there. I thank all the ladies for coming in tonight. I am Marwan Cameron for Karen Vargas, Christina, and for Deborah Moore Jackson. This is The Conduit. We will see you next time.
Thank you.